More sexual misconduct allegations against high-profile celebrities. This time, Fox Sports and two of its biggest stars are in the hot seat. A former hairstylist has filed a lawsuit accusing Skip Bayless, Joy Taylor, and others of sexual battery and harassment, even going so far as to say Bayless offered her more than $1 million for sex. We've got our hands on this lawsuit, and we are bringing you the most shocking claims. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, as soon as this hit the headlines, we knew we had to cover it, right? The sexual misconduct allegations that have rocked the sports world. Los Angeles hairstylist Noushin Faraji says that she worked with Fox Sports from 2012 to August of last year, and during that time, she claims she was not only subjected to a hostile work environment that included inappropriate comments and touching, but she says she also dealt with retaliation from the company for speaking out. So she has filed both a class action complaint, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later, and an individual complaint on multiple grounds, including things like failure to pay minimum wages, unfair, unlawful, or fraudulent business practices, hostile work environment, and sexual battery. Now, in the opening paragraph of her complaint in this lawsuit, it reads, Ms. Faraji brings forth this action because for over a decade at Fox, she was forced to endure a misogynistic, racist, and ableist workplace where executives and talent were allowed to physically and verbally abuse workers with impunity. When Ms. Faraji and others came forward to report the wrongdoing, instead of addressing their concerns, Fox retaliated against them while the perpetrators and those who protected them were inexplicably promoted. This case thus represents yet another in a long line of cases chronicling the toxic culture at Fox, marked by bad faith promises and repeated failures to address a poisonous and entrenched patriarchy. Now, you might be saying this and saying, I'm not a sports fan. I have no idea who we're talking about. That's okay. We're going to give you a rundown about who the defendants are in this case and other major players as well. So we want to give you a quick rundown of this. We're going to first dive into what Faraji accuses them of. So Faraji is suing Fox Corporation, Fox Sports, Fox Sports 1 and 2, often known as FS1 and FS2, and Fox Sports Production. And as well, she is also suing Charlie Dixon, Skip Bayless, and Joy Taylor. First, we'll start with Charlie Dixon. Charlie Dixon is the executive vice president of content for Fox Sports 1. And by the way, that's apparently Fox's flagship multi-sport national network. And he is responsible for overseeing the content and production for the network and has the authority to make decisions about employees. Skip Bayless is a renowned, albeit controversial, sports commentator who's worked in print, radio, television for decades. He's worked as a commentator with Stephen A. Smith on ESPN2's show First Take. This is before he debuted his own show with Shannon Sharpe called Skip and Shannon Undisputed. This was on Fox Sports 1 in 2016. And that, by the way, is where he worked with Noushin Faraji, who was part of the styling team for the network. And by the way, in 2021, the New York Post reported that Bayless had signed a $32 million contract with Fox. It's important when we talk about his wealth a little bit later. All right, now before we go any further, I have to talk to you guys about something. This is huge for me. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this, but there is a grooming line called Brickle. I've been using it, talking about it for years. They are now our sponsor here on Sidebar. I am so excited to share this with you. So I have been using their incredible products for almost a decade. Their daily moisturizer, 2 times a day, hydrates my face, smooths out my skin. They have the eye cream that helps to fight those wrinkles, aging. In this business, you're not allowed to age. So, and then they got, of course, hair products too. I mean, do I need to say more? It's me. Come on, you know what I'm talking about. And Brickle has so much more to offer that they have made it super easy for you to try everything that I use with this extensive 16-piece free, yes, free sample kit. You get everything: face washes, moisturizers, anti-aging cream, shampoos, conditioners. Again, totally free. You're only paying for shipping. Also, and this is another reason why I love Brickle, this isn't a subscription. It's a one-time introduction to the brand so you can see what works for you. There's no strings attached. So right now you can head over to bricklemensproducts.com/sidebar or scan the QR code on screen and claim your free kit today. Now, Joy Taylor is also a host. She's a host for FS1, and she was the moderator for Undisputed for a few years, working closely with Bayless and Shannon. Now, she moved to another show called The Herd with Colin Cowherd on FS1 in 2018, and she's had many other hosting gigs since. Her Instagram is filled with not only reactions to some of the biggest sports news, but also glamour shots, videos where she gives advice about relationships or comments on current events. Now, Faraji says as Taylor continued to move from show to show, she had requested Faraji to continue to be her stylist. Now, the lawsuit notes that there are two other people here. There's Mark Silverman, president and COO of Fox Sports, and Eric Shanks, CEO and executive producer of Fox Sports. They could become named as defendants. They're not currently named, but they could be named as defendants as the case progresses and there's discovery in this lawsuit. Because the complaint reads, on information and belief, Mr. Silverman and Mr. Shanks approved, were made privy to, or should have been privy to, all significant employment decisions and personnel-related investigations related to misconduct and or harassment by Fox Sports executives and talent. Further, on information and belief, Mr. Silverman and Mr. Shanks, along with Fox legal team, worked hard to protect perpetrators by forcing individuals who were witnesses to or targets of misconduct and or harassment to sign non-disclosure agreements upon separation from employment. So, on January 3rd, Faraji filed this complaint, laying out what she says had happened to her during her time at Fox Sports. And according to Faraji, she had worked part-time for Fox starting in 2012 and then went full-time in 2016. During that time, she says she befriended Joy Taylor, and this was after Taylor had moved from Miami to Los Angeles for the chance to host on Fox Sports. According to Faraji, Taylor didn't have a regular position at the time, but was available to fill in when needed. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because Faraji claims that when she would go out to meet Taylor for dinner or drinks, Charlie Dixon, again, the vice president for content, was always around. And Faraji says that she didn't even know he was an executive with the company until later when she mentioned to Taylor that she'd seen that guy who always buys us drinks in the elevator. And that is when she said that Taylor shushed her, explained what Dixon's position was in the company. And Faraji believed, based on her interactions with these two people, that they were sleeping together. And when she warned Taylor that that might not be a great idea, that a relationship like that could be dangerous, Taylor allegedly told her not to worry about it. And by the way, apparently both Dixon and Taylor were married at the time. So according to the complaint, in approximately July of 2016, word spread amongst Fox employees about a new show that was going to be a big deal as it would star Mr. Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. It was known that Fox was looking for a woman with significant TV experience to also star. Therefore, it came as a surprise when Fox announced that Miss Taylor, who is a bartender and radio host in Miami with very little TV experience, would be the moderator of the new show, a sports debate program, Skip and Shannon Undisputed. So Faraji claims that Bayless didn't want Taylor to host the show. In fact, in the lawsuit, she claims that at a dinner between Taylor and Bayless, Taylor shows up, she's dressed, and starts acting very provocatively, potentially in a way to change his opinion about her being on the show, but eventually Bayless agreed to approve her on the show as a favor to Dixon. Okay, when the show premiered in 2016, Taylor, according to Ms. Faraji, had requested that Faraji be her hairstylist, and eventually Bayless had asked her to do his hair as well. Not long after, in January of 2017, Faraji claims that she had attended a birthday party for Taylor. When she goes to this birthday party, she says that Dixon was there, and he was drinking quite heavily. The complaint reads, as Miss Faraji was standing near the bar facing the crowd, Mr. Dixon approached her. He asked the bartender for a drink and then placed his arm on Miss Faraji's lower back. He asked how she was doing, if she was having fun, and if she wanted a tequila shot. Miss Faraji felt very uncomfortable by his unsolicited touching and responded, no thank you. Mr. Dixon then moved his hand lower and started rubbing her body and grabbing her buttocks. Miss Faraji was mortified, but quickly thought to fake an incoming call to escape from the situation. The complaint goes on to say Miss Faraji did not know who to turn to, but as she knew Miss Taylor was sleeping with Mr. Dixon, she turned to her. Surprisingly, Miss Taylor responded to get over it and explained that she herself only had her job because of Mr. Dixon and that Miss Faraji only had her job because Miss Taylor requested her. She warned that Mr. Dixon could take both away. The complaint goes on, Miss Faraji was terrified and then turned to her co-worker Anonymous to discuss the situation. Anonymous responded that Mr. Dixon was disgusting, that the entire situation was sick, that it wasn't shocking given Fox's culture, and that Ms. Faraji should remain quiet if she wanted to keep her job. As a single mother who needed the job to support her son, Ms. Faraji had no choice but to remain silent. So, by the way, that is one of the reasons why you might be saying, well, if all this happened, why didn't she file a lawsuit sooner? And we'll get into more of the allegations. But this is a reason. She needed the job. That's something that I will think will come up in a potential lawsuit, a potential trial, if she's being grilled under cross-examination. Okay, moving forward. Later on in the complaint, Faraji claims that Taylor continued to use her sexuality to advance at the Fox company. And she did that by allegedly sleeping with Emmanuel Acho, a former football player turned commentator. So the lawsuit reads, quote, in approximately February 2020, Ms. Taylor asked Ms. Faraji to meet her for lunch in Beverly Hills. When Ms. Faraji arrived, she found Ms. Taylor with a man, Emmanuel Acho. Ms. Faraji didn't know Mr. Acho, but could tell that the two were romantically involved. A few months after meeting Mr. Acho at the lunch, Ms. Faraji noticed him in the hallway while at work. Ms. Faraji later asked Ms. Taylor if Mr. Acho also worked at Fox. Ms. Taylor confirmed and explained that she wanted Mr. Acho to eventually recommend her on the show Speak for Yourself. Ms. Faraji became alarmed and warned Ms. Taylor that she should probably not sleep with Mr. Dixon and Mr. Acho at the same time, as Mr. Dixon is a very powerful man that may become very angry. Ms. Taylor told her not to worry about it. She explained that she was also now powerful, and once Mr. Dixon was no longer useful to her, she would follow through on her plan to tell the company that he forced himself on her. She would not allow herself to be forced out by Mr. Dixon like other women talent. Wow. Okay, now back to Faraji's claims of sexual battery. So Faraji says in addition to doing hair for the talent, she was also required to give haircuts to Bayless once a week. And she says that's when he started finding excuses to touch her, including giving her these lingering hugs and kisses on her cheek, where he would also press against her breasts. In approximately summer of 2017, while Ms. Faraji was giving Mr. Bayless a haircut, he told her that she was voluptuous. As English is her second language and she was not familiar with the word, Ms. Faraji asked what that meant. Mr. Bayless seemed amused and told her to, quote, figure it out. Ms. Faraji later asked a coworker what the word meant and was mortified. Mr. Bayless then started being more aggressive and direct in his advances. Ms. Faraji continuously declined, stating that she did not date at work as she is a single mom and needed her job. And Faraji also made further stunning allegations against Bayless, including that he offered her money for sex. You remember when I talked about his wealth? Well, the complaint reads, quote, in July of 2021, Ms. Faraji developed issues with her left ovary and was advised it could be cancer. With a fourth biopsy scheduled, she explained her situation to Mr. Bayless, hoping that he would take pity on her and cease his advances. Instead, Mr. Bayless told her that he wanted to be with her. Ms. Faraji panicked and began rambling that there were cameras everywhere, that she has a child, that she does not want him. Mr. Bayless then grabbed her hands, began kissing them, and offered her $1.5 million to have sex. Ms. Faraji made an excuse to leave. The complaint goes on. Approximately 1 week later, Mr. Bayless made another advance at Ms. Faraji. Ms. Faraji responded, Skip, stop, you have a wife. Mr. Bayless responded, aren't you Muslim? Doesn't your dad have 3 to 4 wives? Ms. Faraji responded that her father was dead, and when Mr. Bayless looked taken aback, she made an excuse to leave. Now, at one point during her tenure at Fox Sports, Bayless reportedly started to think that Faraji was in a sexual relationship with his co-host Shannon Sharpe. This is a big point in the complaint. And he allegedly confronted Faraji about it. And Faraji denied having any sort of relationship with Shannon Sharpe, saying that she was just nice to all the talent, then he was just misunderstanding the situation. And Faraji says that she even used a recording device to capture one of the conversations with Skip Bayless. Quote, Mr. Bayless then arrived in the makeup room for Ms. Faraji to cut his hair in accordance with his regular schedule. Mr. Bayless knew that the makeup room was always recorded and clearly states, this room is bugged. During their conversation, Mr. Bayless stated that he would hate for her to lose her job, but she can't be doing a big thing with my arch rival. She responded by reiterating that being polite to Mr. Sharpe is part of her job. Mr. Bayless responded, BS, 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 I'm calling BS on you. Mr. Bayless then warned her that he doesn't want her to lose her job over this. Ms. Faraji responded that she wasn't going to lose her job because she's a great hairdresser. Mr. Bayless responded, "I have love for you, and I have for 6 years, and you hurt me, and you are ruining this." Ms. Faraji again responded that she must be polite to all talent. Mr. Bayless then implied that if he stopped requesting her, it would affect her job. Later on, the complaint reads, on December 21st, 2023, Mr. Bayless told Ms. Faraji that he still loved her and confided that Mr. Dixon was the one who had told him that Ms. Faraji was sleeping with Mr. Sharp. Mr. Bayless then again tried to have sex with Ms. Faraji. Ms. Faraji's diary entry for that day states, "I said, Skip, I'm only interested in working with you and having friendship relationship with you and nothing else. He said, you have no idea you were losing everything. I don't know what he means by that, and I hope he doesn't take me off the show. It makes me sick to my stomach, and it's really hard for me to work like this. I hope God help me because Fox is supporting people like Charlie and Skip." Now, a little side note here. If there is a recording, that is very important evidence for Faraji, on top of what she seems to suggest are text messages between her and Bayless. For example, in the complaint it reads, on April 14th, 2022, Mr. Bayless texted Ms. Faraji, "If you're distracted tomorrow, I'll wait till Monday, but I can't keep doing this." Ms. Faraji told him that she was very confused. Mr. Bayless responded, "Trust me, I'm far more confused." And Ms. Faraji then explained over text that she is not sleeping with Mr. Sharp. Mr. Bayless did not respond. Now, there could be a way for Skip Bayless to explain that, right? He could say perhaps this was about her work performance, that this is something along the lines of this is if she's sleeping with Shannon Sharp, then this is going to be problematic for her. It's going to be problematic for the show. There might be a way for him to argue against that, right? Perhaps this was something else. And I should also say that a lot of these alleged conversations, these interactions that center around sex between Faraji and Bayless, they seem to be in person. So this is a he said, she said situation. But if you have text messages, if you have a recording, that changes the game. Now, going back to Shannon Sharp for a minute, he gave a brief response to the allegations Sunday night on his YouTube show called Nightcap, basically saying this has nothing to do with him.
I don't know why everybody if you notice, everybody's posted it. They got me. In the 42 pages, it don't mention nothing about Shannon Sharp did anything. But y'all want to get clicks, so y'all mention me.
And to be clear, Faraji doesn't accuse Shannon Sharp of any sort of misconduct here. And Sharp and Bayless, by the way, no love lost there. They have clashed multiple times on air, and Sharp eventually left the show in 2023. Now, the lawsuit also lays out multiple allegations of workplace harassment and discrimination related to Faraji's Persian heritage, her accent, her humming. According to Faraji, she hums as a coping mechanism for PTSD, and she's been doing that since she was a child, something that everyone at Fox knew. But she had been humming for all the years she worked at Fox, but says toward the end of her time there were suddenly complaints about it. When Undisputed was canceled in August and Bayless left, Faraji was taken off the schedule. When she questioned her supervisors about it, they couldn't really give her any answer as to why. That's at least what she says. And several days later, Fox told her that they could only afford one hairdresser to work on all three shows, a new morning show, Speak, and Undisputed. And Faraji's attorneys say in the complaint, Fox systematically reduced her work schedule and ultimately terminated her employment by removing her from the schedule entirely, using fabricated business necessities as a pretext. At this point, Ms. Faraji seeks justice. She knows that Mr. Dixon used his position of power to coerce women into having sex with him and used it as a justification to grope Ms. Faraji. She knows that Mr. Dixon did not immediately fire her after Ms. Taylor and Ms. Faraji had a falling out, only to appease Mr. Bayless by providing him with a plaything. Despite Ms. Faraji being an excellent hairdresser and continuously being requested by talent, she was shrunken down to how much she could appease Mr. Bayless, and once Mr. Bayless was gone, so was her job. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Faraji is filing both her own individual complaint and she is wanting to bring a class action lawsuit against Fox on behalf of, quote, all non-exempt hourly individuals who worked for Fox in California during the period commencing 4 years prior to filing of this complaint. Now, a few things I'll just mention about a class action. So this is a call to action about other people coming forward instead of them all filing individual lawsuits against Fox. if you have a bunch of plaintiffs who are basically alleging the same thing, the same kind of issues, you can combine that into one giant lawsuit, one giant class action lawsuit, and she would presumably be the representative of that group. And there's a lot of reasons why you do a class action lawsuit. One of them, it helps with efficiency. Instead of the courts dealing with multiple lawsuits and witnesses, the same kind of witnesses having to testify in so many different trials, in terms of a practical result, in terms of efficiency, it can all be done at one trial. And also, it might be a strategic advantage for a settlement action as well if you have multiple plaintiffs as well. And this lawsuit says it's believed that there are more than 100 employees and former employees who would qualify after having not been paid properly for things like overtime, double shifts, and more. And on behalf of herself, for her individual complaint, this is now specific to her, maybe not the other plaintiffs here, she has filed the following causes of action. Sexual battery. So this is for the alleged actions of both Dixon and Bayless. Dixon, it was for that alleged incident that happened at the birthday party. And for Bayless, it was for those lingering hugs after each haircut, where there was also allegations of him kissing her cheek too. And by the way, it's not just a claim against these two guys. No, it's also against Fox, arguing that the company is legally liable for the actions of its employees. In the law, we call that respondeat superior. She's also suing for hostile work environment in relation to sex or gender, race or national origin, and disability. We talked a little bit earlier about what those claims are about. Failure to prevent harassment. So that is against the Fox defendants, because the argument would be it was their job to take all reasonable steps to prevent discrimination or harassment. Negligent supervision, hiring, and retention. So this is in relation to the employment of people like Skip Bayless and Charlie Dixon. Retaliation, wrongful termination, this idea that she was engaging in protected activity under the law, particularly speaking out about things, and she was punished for it. And, she was defending herself and she was punished for it. So she is seeking restitution, damages for employees who would be involved in this class action lawsuit. She's also requesting damages, like compensatory damages for herself. And Faraji also wants Fox to fire the multiple people who were involved here, including Charlie Dixon, Joy Taylor, and Faraji's direct supervisor, Gina Peretti, who she also accuses of bullying her. Now, Fox Sports released a statement to Front Office Sports over the weekend saying, "We take these allegations seriously and have no further comment at this time, given this pending litigation." And at the time of this recording, no response from Skip Bayless or his legal team. That may change. They may just decide to provide an answer in their legal filings. But the first thing that would happen, of course, is after this, is there would be an answer to these allegations. There could also be a potential motion to dismiss, which we might see as well. But clearly, this is the start of what could be a protracted litigation, really has shaken up the sports world, and we will see where it goes. But that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.